Hey everybody, it's Elias Mastrogiannis here, and this is the Distillery Nation Podcast, where insightful business advice collide with craft distillery interviews. Look no further, as you found the podcast you need to listen for craft distilling. Hello and welcome to episode 04 of the Distillery Nation Podcast. Today's guest is Jason Parker. Jason is the co-owner and distiller of CopperWorks Distilling, located here in Seattle, Washington, and the mind behind CopperWorks Gin and Vodka. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure, and it's actually really cool. We're actually doing the interview live from the distillery.
That's right.
We're here in the office right now, so it's really cool, and get to see and taste the products as well. So Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and talk a little bit about your personal life as well?
I'll try. Let's see. I was raised in the South, raised in Georgia and in Kentucky. Spent about 20 years there and then moved out here. Moved out in 1983 and came to Washington and haven't gone back since, other than to visit. So I started brewing at home in Kentucky. Got a passion for that, drank a lot of bourbons, as you can imagine, in Kentucky. And then when I came out here, got into brewing in 1989. I was hired as the first brewer at Pike Place Brewery up in the Pike Place Market.
Yep.
Worked for Charles and Roseanne Finkel and just had a wonderful time, decided I wanted that to be my career. So I had been going to school at the time when I dropped out to go take that job. So I went back to school to get a chemistry degree, and then later a microbiology degree. And so came out of school ready to hit the road, hopefully back with the Pike Brewing, but at that time they hadn't built a bigger brewery.
Yeah.
So I got a job working at Red Hook. Loved working at Red Hook.
Up in Woodinville?
No, actually, this is in Fremont. This is before their Woodinville plant.
Nice.
Had a lot of fun. It's where the old Theo's chocolate company is now, and what's called the Trolleyman. And stole a bunch of ideas from them. I'll be candid. I stole a bunch of ideas from them and went and helped opened up Pyramid Breweries, and was on the first brewing staff of Pyramid down here on Royal Brome in First Avenue.
Yes, yeah.
And that was really fun. At the time when we were working there, we were the second largest craft brewery in the U.S. And it was really a fun ride. I was there for 7 years, working my way up to brewmaster. And enjoyed it, but the writing was on the wall around the year 2000 that it was a dog-eat-dog world in brewing. And it was becoming a little less about the beer for me and a little more about the money. And I didn't want to chase that.
Being that.
So I left, got into IT, worked in IT. That's a natural progression for all brewers. No, I'm just teasing. But in Seattle, it isn't that unusual. If you had a heartbeat in the year 2000 and could put two words together, you could pretty much get a job in IT, which I did. Ended up working the last 7 years of that 13-year IT job at the Gates Foundation.
Okay.
The Gates Foundation. Had a great time over there.
Very nice.
That ruined me for anything for-profit. Micah Nutt, my business partner here and long-term friend of 25 years, we had always kind of thought about, he had always wanted to open a brewery with me, and I'd always said, no, not a brewery, no, not ready to do that. And we decided to open a distillery.
Excellent.
We're natural pairing.
Which actually dives into our next question.
Right.
Like how, you kind of talked a little bit about the progression from being a brewmaster in so many really big and known breweries around the area and nationwide. Can you tell us a little bit of the story about CopperWorks and, the story with Micah as well? Like how do you guys came together and said, we have to do a gin and we have to do vodka, and plus all the new products that are coming along from CopperWorks as well.
Yeah, well, actually, what we said is we have to do whiskey. We have to do malt whiskey because we are brewers and we know malt.
You have the background, right? Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we connected with. Let's see, what's the phrase you always use? I have a friend who owned a still at home, and he made a really great whiskey. Yeah, wink, wink.
Yeah.
And in fact, a little bit of experimentation exposed that this is a really great opportunity that hadn't been tapped in the Northwest or anywhere other than a company called Stranahan's out of Denver, Colorado. Stranahan's Colorado whiskey. I had found a bottle somehow and it tasted that, and I shared that with Micah, and we both agreed if we can make something that delicious with our brewing background, because that was also, by the way, that was made from a beer. we would really have a lot of fun doing this, and probably would be successful. So we decided to do something that was going to take advantage of our strengths, and one of them was I built several different breweries, and I'd also consulted for several different breweries as well as the ones I worked for. So I knew enough about building plants to know that we could build the last one first. We didn't have to build a small one, and then 2 years later build a medium-sized one.
Expand.
And 2 years or 3 years later find the place to build the final one. If we could get it capitalized. And that would actually save us money. Because by building the biggest one last, first, instead of going through 2 different iterations, we don't have to build 3 times, we build once. We don't have to change our recipes each time as we scale. We don't have to throw labor at it as we're trying to get started. But we do have a big capital investment. We took that approach. We also, from past experiences working in the Pike Place Brewery, I knew the importance of having fresh, new, moneyed tourists walking into your door every day with pretty much an intention to have a good time and to take a souvenir home.
Yeah.
Instead of being, say, out in the boonies where people have a hard time to get to you, and if they do, they're going to buy something, but they generally don't stumble upon you unless they happen to be really lost. So the second big bar was not only did we wanted to build the last one first, we also wanted to build it in a super public area, the Pike Place Market or the Seattle waterfront.
And you are in Seattle waterfront, which is a perfect location right by the pier. So
that's right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Micah joined in too as well. So I'm Elias. Yeah, good to meet you as well. So feel free to join as well, and we'll kind of do a round robin as well. So
we got a couple minutes.
So Micah, Elias and I were just talking about our meeting of 25 years ago, and how you had been saying you wanted to do a brewery, and I was saying no, and then I was saying that when we tasted some whiskeys together, particularly that Stranahan's Colorado whiskey, and realized that malt whiskey was something made out of beer that was delicious, that we had the opportunity to do something that really wasn't being done. And then the other points that we really wanted to build the last distillery first, and we wanted to be in a public area so that we were taking advantage of
easy, accessible, and
tourism.
And that first point, terribly important, particularly when you're buying custom-built stills from Scotland. You don't want to have to order those twice. So we had seen some of the Washington State distilleries, after a year and a half or two, have to rebuild their still house, and it just wasn't going to be a practical model.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very cost. Yeah, I'm assuming very cost. It costs a lot of money to move locations and buy new stills. And what do you do with the old ones? Do you sell them? Do you? So that makes a lot of sense that you guys took that approach as well. So
well, we lucked out too in this building, Elias. We knew that the market was a great place, or the Seattle waterfront. A lot of things came into just fell into place just from the stars. The building wasn't as big as the footprint as we had when we first started committing to it. But as we worked with the landlords, they offered us more and more space to the point where we were able to grow through the beginning stages before even building out to a 7,000 square foot location.
Excellent.
And that also, that was just really fortuitous.
Excellent.
It did throw in a little wrench. Remember us talking about how interested Micah and I are in brewing and how our backgrounds position us for that? Yeah, well, we don't brew here. So the interesting thing was this building actually is not a great place to run a brewery for 2 reasons. One is it's now a historic landmark, so we can't have grain silo out front or spent grain truck. But also the floor is floating above a parking garage, and so we can't cut trench drains. And if you've ever been in a brewery,
to be able to drain out the mash.
Yeah. Well, that's in the water time, but just to be able to clean the place down and just really be an efficient, clean floor print, you need trench drains. We can't have them.
Yeah.
So good news is we've got friends in the brewing industry, and that's what we leveraged. We ended up talking to Dick Cantwell at Elysium Brewery. He worked for me briefly at Pike Place Brewery right before I left. I got a chance to hire him, and then also the folks up at Pike Place Brewery.
Excellent.
We now make our wash our beer with no hops, if you would, at one of those two places.
I see, and then you bring it in and you distill it.
We only bring the fresh, sweet wort in, and then we bring that into our fermentation cellar, add yeast, and do fermentation here. Excellent. By doing it that way, we don't tie up more than about 4 to 5 hours of their brew house, so no cellar time at all. They have no packaging, they have no storage, they don't pay tax because it's sweet, unfermented wort.
And their fermenters aren't tied up.
Exactly.
And because we're transporting just unfermented wash, there's not an issue of having to transfer in bond for taxes, and it's not a hazardous material.
Meaning there's no alcohol, right? There's nothing. It's just unfermented,
sugar water.
Yeah. And then you bring it here into the fermenters with your yeast.
Right. So then we do a real traditional ale fermentation, 72 degrees.
Pure ale yeast?
Yeah. We're using the Elysian's House Ale yeast because of its esters and its attenuation and flavors that it produces.
Excellent.
Very good yeast.
That's a very good business model as well, because as you said, it kind of the building limitations wouldn't allow you to do that. So
a lot of things worked in our favor, Elias. We also weren't really thinking. I should have been thinking more carefully about it. Was assuming that we were going to put 2 million BTUs worth of gas in here, and actually we're heading down that road when our architect, a good friend of mine from a different life, I used to play bluegrass with him, said, "Hey, are you going to use Seattle Steam since they're right next door?" And I said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." Ran over and asked them if they would provide steam. Turns out Pike Place Brewery is also using steam. From Seattle Steam. Now they're called N-Wave. They just were recently bought, but that is great.
And this building was already plumbed for the steam, as Seattle Steam, now N-Wave, pipes to breweries, hospitals, biotech firms, and Amgen and Immunex, biotech firms, were in this building about 5 years ago. So we just had to make penetrations from the parking garage below, and Seattle Steam did some great pro bono upgrade of that infrastructure for us. So they've been really fantastic partners.
Yeah, they really have. That has been a real...
So moving into the next question, what was your guys' going back in time, your worst distillery moment, like going back even from the beginnings, or, tying up the money and making the decision on going all in this? Can you take us a little bit of time and tell us about that?
Micah's worst moment was just cleaning those totes down there at the spray lights we had.
Yeah, one of the problems
painful.
with being small is that we don't have enough people, and at this point we can't afford to hire more people, even from the very beginning. In the very beginning, before we opened our doors, there were just 3 of us, Jason and Jeff Canoff and myself. We've since been able to hire another full-time employee to work the tasting room, but we just don't have enough days or hours in a day to do all the work we have, and that's been an issue from the beginning. Hopefully, we'll be able to
grow and hire.
Yeah,
exactly. I'll tell you a little horror story that happened to me that Micah knows about, but he probably doesn't know how many hours of sleep I lost on it because it was totally my fault.
The cooling tower?
The cooling tower,
yeah.
Right? We committed to the stills. We brought the stills over, and I was used to heat exchangers in breweries that are super efficient. And these heat exchangers that are on these stills are super inefficient for a very practical purpose because they don't want to put too much warm water back into the streams that they pull from to cool their towers.
In Scotland, they have pretty much an infinite source of cold water to use in their condensing heads to turn their vapor into condensate and the distillate.
Is it usually, you mean, a lot of water from like a river?
That's right. Exactly. That's why Scottish distilleries are almost always built on a river, so they have that source of cold water. And it's also why they don't distill in the summer. Instead, do plant maintenance because the water is too warm and too low. So they distill 9 months out of the year, take off 3 months from distilling. Here we are with these things thinking, oh yeah, we got all the city water we're going to need. Well, it turns out you actually need 70,000 gallons of water per batch.
Wow.
I didn't think that was possible, that there would be 70,000 gallons of water per batch flowing through there. But that's what they require. The delta T, that is to say the temperature that it picks up, is only 9 degrees. I'm used to something around 140 to 160 degree delta T from what comes in. So bad news was we needed a Scottish river. And through another partnership, the folks over at Pro Refrigeration, we were able to get, some free engineering help to help us find basically what we call our Scottish river on the roof. It's a cooling tower. It takes that cool water from the city, runs it into about 500 to 1,000 gallons into a sump, and then that water is recycled over and over and over again, just using the evaporation in that cooling tower.
Which is really cool. You don't have to waste a lot of water that way. And
maybe 500 gallons in a day, in a hot day.
Wow. That's really awesome.
Lost a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
So,
I can definitely see
one
that.
of those things, I guess kind of the lesson from that is even the things you think you know, you got to put them on paper because maybe you don't.
Excellent. So, can we talk a little bit of the aha moment? You know, you kind of touched on it a little bit when you guys got together and said, you know, Mike asked you, should we open a brewery? And you said no. Mm-hmm. Why did you guys said no to that when you had all that experience and, you know, decided distillery was the option and the way to go?
Well, I'll speak for Jason here a little bit, what I know, because I was a bit on the sly when I was looking to open a brewery years ago. I'm not sure how much Jason really knew, but Jason had been in brewing for a long time, and he was about ready to get out, I think, when I first approached him. But when the craft distilling legislation passed, going on 9 years, I think now, and distilleries started popping up, and Jason, a couple years after that, started hosting these whiskey tasting parties, which he invited me to. We both saw that this time is pretty analogous to the microbrewing revolution, but with distilleries. Distilleries are popping up. It's a new frontier, and so it's a super exciting time. You know, we got in a few years late, and it took a lot of talking back and forth and drifting apart, coming back together, and then actually starting to implement.
Committing and starting on the plan.
But it wasn't brewing, which Jason had pretty much done.
Was burned out essentially, if you want to.
Probably done all. I don't want to speak much more.
I've done all of what
you know, and he's a great brewer. You know, nationally, if not world renowned. But the idea of making something else, but comes from beer, was really exciting and an exciting time. And the distilling industry today, even from a few years ago, is just so amazing with all the craft distilleries popping up. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Especially in Seattle as well. So we have so many cool craft distilleries around here. So,
but I'll tell you when the aha moment was, Elias, that was when we pulled the bomb out of a 1 gallon whiskey that we had made from beer and distilled the way we planned to do it in the future. If that whiskey had been anything other than delicious, we probably would not be sitting here. But it turned out it was friggin' great. And we were like, wow, and this we made. Nice. And this is something that isn't available.
So it was kind of making that first concept or the first whiskey that kind of
concept.
That made you go into this and that's awesome.
If it hadn't been good, we'd still have our day jobs.
Excellent. So we'll move into the distillery round. So and then feel free to either talk over or take turns as well. What is your guys' biggest strength as a distiller? And feel free again to talk as one or as separate folks as well. So either one, Jason or
Micah.
Well, I think our biggest strength is that we're taking our knowledge of brewing beer and applying that to modern or day distilling. I mean, modern brewing techniques where the washes that have been made for hundreds of years are using brewing knowledge that is hundreds of years old. And so that's something we're doing that's a lot different than most distilleries. The idea to start off with a great beer without hops, of course, use that as our wash to make a great whiskey. That's just not done anywhere. I mean, using a quality yeast, doing temperature-controlled fermentation for the most part. So really making the best product to begin with and turning it into the best whiskey possible.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So one more thing. So I've worked with and hired a bunch of different brewers. The most important thing that a brewer can do is not to change the recipe every time, but have a absolute commitment to making the best recipe you've decided to do so that it is in fact reproducible. So you've got to have two facets. You've got to be experimental and you've got to be consistent. Well, one of the things that's been such a great discovery about Micah, and I knew this, from years of watching his homebrew, he does not take any shortcuts. He does not ever give up. And if it's not right, he's going to get it right. Mm-hmm. And there's one or two other people that I've ever brewed with who are as dedicated to that quality as Micah is to the beers he makes. That's one of the reasons that I think we're going to be such a great consistent product, and recognized as that is that the products come out the way we intended them to. I'm not that good. I get distracted. I walk away and suddenly something's boiling over.
Yeah.
But Micah doesn't do that. And so this is one of the reasons why it's been a real pleasure working together.
Kind of a zing and a zang, right?
We sort of have our strengths, and we also know what our weaknesses are, and we can cover those.
So,
and consistency is terribly difficult when you're small.
Yeah.
And so we're employing several tricks, I'll say, to become consistent with our gin, rather than making one distillation and then bottling that. We'll do 4 or 5 and combine them, and then we bottle half of that, and then we do 2 or 3 more distillations, add to that, because we don't have the luxury to blend thousands of gallons of spirit like the big distilleries.
So when you said bottle half, do you keep the other half for like the next batch? That way you kind of move it.
Exactly.
Kind of like the sour mash, right? Or
Solera system.
Yeah, where you kind of bring forward some of the old.
Right. So we save that half. We make 2 or 3 more batches, blend it in with the old half, bottle half of that. Make 2 or 3 more batches, blend that in with the remaining half, bottle half of that. So there's, in every bottle that you get, there's a few molecules of batch number 1.
Excellent. That's number 2. That's actually really cool.
3.
That's really cool, actually.
It's a poor man's version of quality control, but I tell you what, it makes a big difference because we do taste our gins occasionally throughout their batch changes, and they're fairly consistent.
Excellent.
It's hard.
Moving to the next question, what is your biggest weakness as a distiller? And then again, feel free to talk.
Well, I can start with this one. I think one of the biggest challenges is that there is no rule book for distilling, and Micah and I both bring a more production focus. So the biggest weakness that I think this company has, and where we're both trying to make up for, is business. We are production people, and we are also running a business, and that has been it's always got to be both. You got to make great products, and you got to run a good business, and you don't always have both skill sets in one group of people. So that's been part of the things that we're getting advice from, hiring some people to help us with, getting consultation, and also just becoming more experienced and trying to learn from our past.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense actually too. Yeah, trying to delegate what you don't know and then try to learn as you move forward as well.
Yeah.
So
we're still self-distributing, and so that really limits us how far out we can get in Washington State, let alone other states. And we would have loved to have signed with a Washington distributor and perhaps out-of-state distributors by now, but you pretty much have to make and sell twice as much product to make the same amount of money because of the markups that the distributors and the retail folks do. And so we're not going to be getting into other states or outside of Seattle plus or minus 30, 60 miles until our whiskey's out and it's affordable. affordable in that we can sell our whiskey as part of the distribution network, so that we don't have to constantly be making more and more clear spirits, which would impede the production of whiskey, which takes years. And if you have to throttle down that production, that's going to impact the future supply that you have.
So you guys are actually making or have a whiskey barrel aging.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So
that's why we opened the distillery.
That's right. So literally, Elias, about between 2/3 and 3/4 of the production that we make is going into barrel. The rest of the product is going to clear spirits that we bottle. So we're producing the base for the vodka and the gin. We're turning those into vodka and gins, and we're also barrel aging the gins. But we only did 540 cases last year of those, but we put up almost 1,500 cases of whiskey
in storage to age,
equivalent.
Yeah.
So, but that won't be coming out for several years. So we're really a whiskey company right now.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have whiskey for sale.
Yeah. Excellent. What is the one thing that have you guys excited right now? Is it the whiskey that you guys seem very excited? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, whiskey's really exciting. And what we're making is particularly interesting because it's not really made much in the United States. Single malt whiskey. There are just a small handful of us. Westland, of course, down the street. They're doing a fantastic job. Stranahan's in Colorado. And so it's a new endeavor for the U.S. There's a lot of bourbon, 51% corn, a little bit of rye whiskey, which actually excites us a bit, but not much in the way of malt whiskey. And none of us, I think, are trying to make Scotch-style whiskey. And our American all-malt whiskey is going to be somewhere in between the two. Like Scotch, it's 100% malted barley. For us, it's distilled on handmade copper Scottish stills, but we're aging a lot of our whiskey in brand new charred American oak, the way bourbon is aged. So kind of half Scotch, half whiskey. We're going to get
kind of in between,
some of those big barrel notes that a lot of the Scottish distilleries don't like, and that's why they use predominantly used barrels. And there's wood is just the exciting factor of the whiskey, and Jason's become quite an authority on wood and the different woods and how important aging properly is. So we're doing something new in the U.S. and hopefully we'll have a good brand along with people like Stranahan's and Westland, an American all malt whiskey that people in the United States are going to turn to instead of bourbon or rye or wheat whiskeys, which most craft distilleries end up making.
And then do you guys barrel age in this facility or outside?
Yeah, so we do everything in temperature controlled and climate controlled facility. Right now it's here, but as we grow we'll have to take it outside of here. And that actually will probably be happening in another year or two, that we're going to make enough barrels of whiskey that we can't move if we don't get another warehouse for it.
Yeah.
But we will do temperature controlled aging, because that is part of our story and that is part of our flavor profile, and that's actually one of the things that we're really excited about. And I'll just say that whole, as Micah mentioned, the whole wood program is also super exciting. You know, there's a lot of things that there's a lot of things that go into opening a distillery, but three main things. You got to make something fermentable. That's our story of beer. We're qualified for that. You got to do a distillation. We've been doing that now for a year and a half. I wouldn't say that we know everything there is to know.
Yeah, no,
2 years here.
2 years here. That's right. August this month, 2 years here. But there's a lot of learning that's happened there. But the wood is still exciting because that's the third part that neither of us had any experience with in beer. And so we're learning about it with gins as fast as we can. We're learning about what happens from the finishes on a product we already know and sell so that we can apply that to the whiskey when it comes out. And frankly, just having a hoot. It's just really fun to taste the expressions after it's been aged.
Yeah, and as we talked earlier too, you guys are doing experiments with gin and different barrels like cognacs and previously used gin barrels and peated and
right. And I will also tell you that even though if you look back there at the 100 barrels that we have up on the wall, you would think they're all the same thing. We actually have quite a few experiments running in there.
Nice.
Different entry proofs, different toasts, different chars, even different woods.
That's awesome.
Both French oak, American oak, different flavor profiles on those.
New and used barrels.
New and used.
Ex-bourbon barrels, sherry barrels.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
Excellent. What is your guys' favorite drink right now?
Well, I just got one that has nothing to do with what we're doing now. I have discovered Thai Punch, which is basically a rum, a clear rum, and I can't stop drinking that.
Okay.
I am drinking so much rum right now.
Is it pre-made or what is the?
It's a Thai Punch is a rum agricole, so that is the rum that is actually made from cane, not from molasses, cane sugar. It's usually the flagship rum of a distillery because it shows off the distillate. There's no barrel influence, so it has to be good rum. Martinique, the French Indies island, makes a delicious rum agricoles. You take that, you add a little bit of swath of lime to it, just the outside shave of lime, and then a little bit of cane sugar, and stir it, no ice, just drink it like it's about a 2-finger thing in the bottom of a rocks glass.
Excellent.
Isn't that funny?
Well, I'm guessing because our last barrel-aged gin was a rum barrel gin.
There you go. Into that mood.
Maybe that's it.
I know I've made with a rum barrel gin quite a few different rum base cocktails, substituting that in. I'm not quite in rum mode myself. My drinking patterns are a little more pedestrian. I've always been a beer guy and still consider myself primarily a beer guy. But I enjoy simple cocktails and scotches, absolutely. But going along with the rum, I've been making El Presidentes with our rum barrel gin that have been really, really fun. Because that's a simple, interesting cocktail with I use typically barrel-aged rum, but now I'm using our barrel-aged gin from a rum barrel, some vermouth, grenadine, and orange liqueur, and an orange twist.
That sounds delicious.
A nice, refreshing summer drink.
Is it 5 o'clock yet?
It is. It's actually 5:04. What is the type of still? You kind of mentioned a little bit, and obviously brand and your capacity here at CopperWorks.
Well, so the Stills are Forsyth. They're out of Scotland, the Highlands of Scotland. They're a family that Forsyths have owned it for 3 generations, but the company was around for 2 generations before then. They bought it from somebody. Those stills are hand-hammered, and part of the reason that Mike and I picked those stills is because they are the epitome of a malt whiskey still. So if you go to Scotland, or you go to Japan, or you go to somewhere else where they're making really world-class malt whiskey, they're pretty much using Forsyth stills, or stills that look very much like them if they happen to be a Diageo company. So we're very excited about having real malt whiskey stills. The reason that they're as big as they are is because we actually don't have a brewery here, so we're able to leverage the friendships with the bigger brew houses, 60-barrel knockouts, that is to say a 60-barrel brew length, and Elysian's Georgetown plant, 30-barrel brew lengths at Pike Place Brewery. Those are big breweries. And so we have big stills so that we don't have to work so hard to make a reasonable volume.
Makes a lot of sense.
And that's been a real privilege, is to be able to work on such great equipment, get that showpiece thing going, the windows that the tourists get to see. And even though they're not the tight, incredible machines that German stills are, you can't get the same flavors. We did have to buy a still for each product.
So you have 4 total, right?
Right, so we have a wash still, we have a whiskey spirit still, we have a vodka column still, a 25 plate, 13-inch column still, and we have a gin still. And each one of them is specifically designed for the flavors we're looking for with those products. Not good at making the other products, so it's not a jack of all trades master.
Yeah, really important to have the right still for the right job, we thought, rather than 1 or 2 artisan stills where you can make everything on it, but perhaps not everything to
as precise
most. So Jason said 4 stills that have particular purposes, and I think that really comes out with our gin having a real gin still.
Yeah.
And when we first started talking, we both agreed that having Forsyth or Scottish whiskey stills was perhaps the most important part of the build out when it comes to the equipment.
Yep.
We really respect what the Scots have done for hundreds of years and wanted those stills for making malt whiskey, and they've got the bonus that they are just gorgeous.
Yeah. All copper, so they look pretty, very pretty. What was holding you guys back from becoming a distiller?
Well, I tell you, there were a couple of things that scared me. 1100 and 1105 were the 2 attempts that Costco had early on when Mike and I were talking together. We were going along in our business plan with coming up with ideas, names, and products, playing around experimentally and just thinking about things that we might want to do. But I know I got kind of cold feet when it came to the 1105 and 1100 because I was really concerned what would the market be like once we privatized, especially the way those rules were written. It was going to be hard for small distilleries to participate.
Yeah.
By the time we were too far into it to be able to say, let's make a change, then 1183 passed. And I have to say, at that point, it was just damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead. We're going to do it, and we're going to take advantage of the things. And in fact, we have made quite a few legislative changes to get back some privileges or gain privileges that we should have, that we now do have as distilleries.
Excellent.
So that's been great.
Yeah, but that's one of the difficulties here in Washington State, where as we have 100 plus DSPs, distilleries licenses, nobody's got really the money to lobby for legislation, and there are a lot of things we've inherited from when the state was running the liquor stores that we really need to get changed or would like to change. And some things with the last legislation that privatized the liquor stores, just to gain parity with other states tax-wise. Washington State has the highest liquor fees in the country, and it's something everybody wants to try to change somehow. And the Washington Distillers Guild has done a lot and still doing a lot, but it's difficult in an industry that's so new. You know, we're not established like the beer or the wine industries. So we'll see as we all grow, and hopefully craft spirits in general will be successful.
Some of the regulations will also change to support that as well.
But I tell you, Les, not too many other things got in our way. When Mike and I decided we were going to do this, we basically found this building and ordered the stills and just ran. And, really, once we decided to do it, we got our DSP in 31 days from the feds. We got our state DSP in 2 weeks after
That's
that.
really fast.
That was fast because we had already done so much homework of building out and hiring the right architects and the right design firms and built and general contractor to get all those things knocked out of the way.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really important too. Excellent. What is the best advice you guys ever received?
My best advice was from Don and Kent over at Dryfly, who knew how hard it was going to be because they were the first guys to do it. And after spending several days over there kind of doing their dry fly school, which almost everybody seems to have been through these days, Kent's last words were, "Don't give up." And I tell you, I listened to that phrase in my head hundreds of times.
Replayed it, right?
This,
Yeah.
Just thinking, yeah, if I give up, then somebody else will take my place. But if I don't give up, maybe somebody else will give up and will take their place. So
Yeah.
I actually had to think about that a lot. There were some times where it was pretty scary, signing your house and personal wealth away on a personal guarantee. Those I had never had to do that before.
Yeah,
and that's now I'll do them all day.
Yeah. Really important.
How about you? What was your?
Boy, nothing really comes to mind except for production side stuff. And I can't remember who told me early on, and I've passed this on to other people, is just make sure the valve is closed before opening.
Very nice.
Really, you wouldn't believe how many times I've opened something and there was something on the other side that was unexpected.
Yeah. Double check. Excellent.
Good point. Yeah.
Excellent. Can you guys share one personal habit that contributes to your success?
Boy, one personal habit.
You guys talked about consistency, right? Like, how does that translate from like your personal life into making a good whiskey and a good vodka and a good gin? Is it?
Yeah, those are good. That's a really good question, and there's a lot of things I think about are both a personal success and also personal burden and a barrier to things. Well, one thing I'll start, and you can probably figure out where I'm going to say. Mike and I have strengths that the other one lacks. And so one of the things that's great about Micah being so dedicated in production is I just get distracted. Where my strength comes is more on the social side, just chatting and talking to people, making them feel comfortable with our brand, our story, and what we're doing. And we've not only purposefully decided how to split those roles, but also sort of naturally migrated to those roles to where we are working with our strengths. And so that habit of just liking to share my story with people has become kind of part of my role at the distillery.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it still comes back to being meticulous. I've always been someone who pays attention to detail, and I do the same thing here with distilling. I keep detailed logs just to make things reproducible, and it's not just for whoever may come and help us eventually or replace me. It's to make my life easier.
Exactly. You can always go back.
If I can look at a batch that was so similar to the one I'm working on, I've got a template, and it just makes life a lot easier, and in the end, the product more consistent as well.
Can you guys share internet resource like Evernote that you can share with our listeners, or something that you use at the distillery that makes your life easier?
One thing that we've been doing, because we're, in terms of internet sort of things, we use Dropbox a lot.
Okay.
To bring, we've in fact run out of room on Dropbox, so we're going to actually to start subscribing to Dropbox. That's been a really great tool for just kind of keeping documents out there so that wherever we are in the field, we can see them. I have to say, we started out with a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, that we are going to move back to. We stopped for a long period of time, about 9 months, and it turns out that Jeff, he is getting out into sales more, is really requesting that we move back to that. It was a big help, and that was, I think, something that we're going to.
What was the tool name, if you recall?
For some reason, the name has dropped out of my head. It's. I'll come up.
No worries. Yeah, we'll link it on the show notes as well. So excellent. What would be a book that you guys recommend to Distillery Nation, and why?
Boy, there aren't any books about distilling that are that are really good or complete. There are a handful, and that's one of the difficult things with trying to get into this field. It's not like beer or wine where there are great books, great internet sites, and there, at least with regards to distilling, there's no
nothing that kind of helps you. Anything that comes close to what you thought was semi-useful?
No, there really isn't. That's part of the problem. Oftentimes when I'm giving a tour, which Jason and I share that job, I'll be talking to people who are interested in becoming distillers or are in the works, and tell them, if you want to make $1 million, write the authoritative text on distilling.
I was actually going to say,
there is none.
We need Micah to write a book.
yeah, right. There is a book on malt whiskey. It's written in Scotland. I was just looking at the name of it, and I think it's actually called Whiskey: Distilling Techniques, Marketing, and something else like that.
Okay, we'll try to track that down and link it.
Ingram Russell, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And that book is great if you're doing pot distillation of Scotch whiskey.
Excellent.
But if you're not doing pot distillation of Scotch whiskey, that book is mostly irrelevant. And so that's, like, if you're doing gin, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of blogs, a bunch of websites that are fun, but the problem is, this is both a problem and it's also a way that you can kind of become competitive, is there isn't a definitive source that everybody is doing. On the other hand, since there is no definitive source, you get to make your own collection of ideas and thoughts. And, that's maybe part of the reason that some distilleries are doing really well in one area and some are doing really well in another area, is because they've tapped in to the knowledge base, as it were, of something that they're doing. Maybe it's vodka, maybe it's gin, maybe it's Amoros. And I would just say that partnering with other people and sharing the stories and personal meetings and tastings is a great way to learn at this point.
Yeah, that was the most important thing for us, is because there isn't any authoritative text, is talking to
getting to know people, essentially,
which the small distillers are willing to talk to you, sharing knowledge, both ways. Volunteering at distilleries or taking one of the few classes available. That's how you learn in this industry right now. And the big distilleries, they don't talk. Their process is just an old secret that they're not willing to divulge at all. And so it's only by talking to people who are doing something moderately similar to what you are that you really learn something. But everybody's stills are different. They operate differently, making different products. So starting with a different base, it might be fruit, it might be sugar base, it might be grain, and then the end products. And so it's a lot more complicated than making beer, because the equipment is specialized and different for different products, and what you start with is different based on what you want to end with. And I think that might be part of the reason there isn't that all-encompassing book, is because there's so much to tackle if you want to be complete.
And in fact, I don't think the book's been written yet. I mean, what I mean is even the knowledge. We are helping, we being craft distillers worldwide, are helping craft the new knowledge of distilling. It's not like it used to be, which is all bourbon, all Scotch, all continuous column still.
So it's been written as we speak. So there's no good definitive guide that says.
There's a lot of stories coming out, a lot of blogs coming out, and a lot of personal things.
Well, before we close out, can you guys tell us one last piece of parting guidance and the best way to connect with you and CopperWorks?
Well, the best way to connect with us is definitely either on our Facebook page, CopperWorks, or at CopperWorks Distilling, that is, or the webpage on CopperWorksDistilling.com, or come by the distillery at 1250 Alaskan Way on the corner of Alaskan and University in Seattle, right on the waterfront here, and visit us. We're open every day.
Excellent.
At noon.
We'll definitely link those information up to our show notes as well.
Yeah, we're all willing to talk to whoever comes in.
Yeah.
Whether be just general about what we're doing, or if they're budding distillers.
Yep.
Jason and I are more than happy to talk with people.
Excellent.
And we don't have any secrets about what we're doing here.
That's really good. And one last parting guidance that you can share with our listeners.
Well, if you're intending to open any business, it's always true. It costs twice as much and takes twice as long. And that's just a fact.
Excellent.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Jason, Micah, thank you for joining today. We really appreciate all the knowledge and your advice.
Thank you so much for having us.
Cheers.
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 Facts came in. Hey, Distillery Nation. If you like what you heard today, please visit distillerynation.com to view all of today's show notes plus any of the previous ones. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter @Greek Distillery. Thank you for listening and have a great day.